I'm almost ready here. Gotta put the microphone on. There we go. Good morning, everybody. It's Monday. I am not going to say happy Monday because, for a lot of you, it's not that happy. But if you're here with me, it makes me happy. I'm in my wood shop, so that's a happy place for me. And hopefully you're in a happy place too. How was everybody's weekend? Mine was not workshop productive, but productive nonetheless. It was not a great weekend weather-wise. It was Mother's Day yesterday. So happy Mother's Day belated to all of you mothers out there. I was able to do some yard work yesterday, so kudos to that. My wife's like, why don't you have the boy cut the grass? And I'm like, my mom said that. She's like, why doesn't your son cut the grass? I'm like, yeah, because I like it to look nice when it's done. That's why. She's like, well, he could do that. Like, he could cut the grass and he could make it look nice. He chooses to not do it. It's not his favorite activity. And so quality of workmanship, really not his concern. All right, I'm going to click over to these things and make sure everybody's working here. I do this so I can see comments and stuff. And if you have comments, obviously I am broadcasting on 3 different websites. So I am on, where am I at? I'm at youtube.com/JeffRavel. I have to refresh my screens here. I am on facebook.com/JRsWoodshop. And I am on, whoa, that's loud. I'm going to silence that. And I am on, what did I say? Twitch, and twitch.tv/JRsWoodshop. And I just check my audio. But mainly I do the computer stuff here so I can see the chat window. So if you do want to hop in and say hello, I am always happy to see your comments and questions and such in the chat window. So that's the easiest thing to do. I try to check it periodically throughout the live cast. I'm not just sitting here at my computer the whole time, so I don't always see them come in. I'm not timely with my responses, but I do try to check it periodically. So if you do have something, you want to throw something in there, if you just want to say hi, or if you have a question, or whatever it may be, please feel free to dump that into the comment. Once again, my socials down kind of right through here. You can see those right all the way to the end there. So all those socials are down there. They're also listed in the descriptions, at least on YouTube and Facebook, they're listed in the description. If you're on Twitch, you probably don't care about that kind of stuff. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, it's Monday. I've got a lot of stuff to do. One of the things I did this weekend was I started finishing the 301 bases that we have been working on. I'm going to go over here and grab one, so pardon me for being off frame for just a second, and then I'm going to get in your frame for just a second, and then I'm going to come back across it again. I know, such bad TV. But I want to show this to you because I've started to do the final top coats on these. So what I did this weekend, I think Friday we had talked about I trace coated these things, and so if you want to go see what trace coating is, there's a whole beginning of Friday's episode covered trace coating. And also I gave some more resources, some YouTube resources and such to go really dive deep into finishing figured woods, which this is figured maple. So go jump into those, that episode. Last Friday, I think that was episode 28. This is episode 29. And there's more information there. But what I did was I trace coated these. Then I finished them with some tung oil over top of that. So tung oil finish, not tung oil, but tung oil finish. So remember, tung oil finish has varnish in it as opposed to pure tung oil. So a little protection gets in the wood. Once the tung oil finish had dried, I covered those with shellac. And that's what I was doing this weekend while I was in here, was hitting these with some coats of shellac. The shellac does a great job of sealing in the trace coat, the dye stain that was there along with the tung oil. So it keeps that kind of sealed into the wood. And then I hit that with a little sandpaper, a little 400 grit just to kind of smooth it out. And then I start putting my final coats on here. So this is a lacquer, semi-gloss lacquer coat that I've put on here. Another great benefit of using like the shellac as an undercoating is it's kind of like using primer with paint. If I was not going to use any shellac, I would probably put more coats of lacquer on here as protection for the wood than I would if I'm using shellac, because I do a couple of layers of shellac on here. That shellac builds up as an undercoat. It's transparent, it's clear, but that provides a protective layer underneath the lacquer, which then I don't have to use as many coats of lacquer. So when I would normally use, say, maybe 6 coats of lacquer on a base to build up a nice protective finish, if I have shellac on there, I can knock that down to maybe 2 or 3 coats and still get a really beautiful finish. This is a very figured piece of wood. Well, I don't know, it's like crazy finished, but I'm trying to show you, and I don't know how well it's coming across on the camera. I'm gonna go over here and see if this looks a little better. So this has some there you go, look at that. Beautiful chatoyance in this. Chatoyance is the way that when you view the wood from a different angle, the grain, the figure either appears or disappears. You're seeing that grain kind of move in and out. So it's kind of like an optical illusion. I think chatoyance is a word that was borrowed from from gemologists to describe things like, I don't know, like a cat's eye or something like that. Anyway, does amazing things with figured woods. So when I hit this with that trace coat, it really enhanced these darker ribbons of figure in there, which are not always visible. You can see when I turn it, some of those drop in and out. So this thing has some beautiful visual effects to it. I'm just putting on the last coats. I just started on this one. I actually had the other 2 to do. I have probably 1 more coat on here. I'm probably going to just hit this with a little 400 or 600 grit just to really get it smooth. And then I will finish this. I'll call that one done. I'll hit it with 1 more coat. The nice thing about the lacquer, as opposed to shellac, you do not need to sand between every coat of lacquer. Shellac you really should, because it doesn't melt into itself. So you always want to create a nice flat surface for that shellac to go on. So when you put a coat of shellac on, then you sand it after it dries, and then you put another coat on. With lacquer, I usually just sand before the last coat, just to make sure that all the little dust nits and everything are nice and smoothed out, and that gives me a really just buttery smooth finish when it's done. I'm not going to sit here and pet my box in front of you, but I could. Anyway, so I did that this weekend. I did all the shellac work and sanding it and everything else, and I've started to do the lacquer work. Unfortunately, it's really cold. We can't get the temperature to really regulate to a good temperature. I don't like to spray lacquer when it's cold. Like if it's below 65, I really don't like to spray lacquer. I just find it performs better when it's a little bit warmer, and it dries better when it's a little bit warmer. So typically 65 plus. Right now it is 67.3 in my garage workshop. But here's the deal. I could spray lacquer in here, but I would be fumigating myself. So I have to open my garage door and have the fan blowing out to move the fumes out. It's just, better that way. That way my garage doesn't stink of lacquer for a week. So I usually have to have the garage door up. Well, it's blustery and cold outside. It's like 55 degrees outside and windy, and that would actually blow all that cold air in. So I'm not going to be doing any lacquer work, probably maybe this afternoon if it warms up. I hope so, because I would like to get these finished. I've got the other 2 back here behind me, and they have also had their lacquer on there. It's hard to see a little bit because the lacquer has been sanded, so it doesn't look really, you can see there's a little bit of shine to it. A little sheen, but I have sanded these down flat with some 400 and then actually hit it with a little steel wool on top of that to get them, as I said, buttery smooth. And then I will finish them with about 3 coats of lacquer on top of that. It's a semi-gloss. I don't want it really, that's the other thing, lacquer, or not lacquer, but shellac is kind of shiny. And I'm not really into glossy, shiny finishes. I prefer a semi-gloss finish. So that lacquer over top kind of tones down that glossiness a little bit as well. Also, sanding it and hitting it with the steel wool, it takes the gloss right off of the shellac. But the lacquer that's my go-to, and so I use this, typically I'll use this Watco Crystal Clear lacquer, and it does not enhance color or anything on there, but all of that shiny, or that semi-gloss depth in the lacquer and the shellac add to the chatoyance, add to that kind of 3D visual effect that you get from figured wood. It just makes it look deeper as opposed to on the surface. So it all enhances the way these things look. So hopefully these will look really great when they're done. I put a video up. I don't know if I put it on I think I put it on my woodworking page on JR's Wood Shop. I put up a short video of me just kind of turning one of these boxes after it had been finished in shellac, and you can see how the grain just kind of like appears and disappears and stuff. It's really cool looking. It's a great effect, and that's when I saw this wood, when I picked it out, it's like that's what I had in mind. So, all right, but that's ancient history. We've got to talk about new history. I'm going to set this over here for the moment. What do we got going on now? Well, Friday we started assessing boards that I have here in the shop to use for a whole new series of bases. I just sold the last one of my standard Singer sewing machine bases this morning. I sold it this morning, sitting in the mailbox waiting to be picked up and off to my customer in the state of Washington. So thank you for that purchase if you're watching. But I have a whole bunch of people going, hey, when are you going to have more? I didn't get any of those. We need them. So I said, okay, you know what? Let's grab all of the wood here in the shop that I have. I don't want to have to make a trip to to my lumber guy because that kills a whole morning. And also I still have wood here. So I'm going to try to use up what I've got. So if you look behind me over here, oh, you can see all these boards right here, these boards, and there's some boards over here. And what I did was I measured out, I have a diagram that I use to get all of my cut measurements. And I used that to figure out how much wood I would need to make bases. So if I took a board like this, and I was like, well, I need 21 inches by 3 inches to make one of my large bases. So I would measure this board out and find out, well, how many, like if I mill this down to 3 inches, 3-inch wide boards, I can obviously split this in half and get probably 2 3-inch wide boards out of it. And then I could get, well, it's longer than 21 inches, so I could get 2 sides out of here. And then I would need 2 faces, and then I would need 3 sides, which those sides are 8 inches, or more or less 8 1/8. So I need 25-ish inches of wood to make the sides. So then I would take a board like this and go, okay, well, let's see, there's 1, 2, so I get 3 boards. So there we go. All right, I've got enough wood for one base kind of thing. So that's the process I go through, is just kind of like doing the math to figure out how many bases I can make. If I need to make, can I make full-size bases with storage compartments, or do I have to maybe make some shorter bases with no storage compartment? And that's all dictated by how much wood I actually have, how wide the wood is. All of my lumber gets milled down to 3 inches wide boards. So this one's already been cut to 3 inches. So 3-inch wide board and 3/4 of an inch thick. That is my spec for all of the bases that I make, at least for the standard Singer bases. So that's my spec, 3 inches wide, 3/4 of an inch thick, and then cut to length for whatever piece I'm making. And that's what I kind of am going towards here. I did have some scrap left over from another project, and I looked at that scrap and said, well, can I cut little pieces out? So you can see like this has a little scoop on the end, but I can get cut out of here, I can get an 8 1/8 inch piece out of there. I can get an 8 1/8 inch piece out of here. This one's a little smaller right here. It has a, you can probably see there's a little dip right here. And if I hold it up to like this one, that will be a little bit more apparent that there is a little dip right here in this piece in front. But my middle board that goes into the base is a divider, and that divider is actually shorter because instead of being the entire width, it actually rests on the bottom of the base. So I lose about 1/4 of an inch in the width of it. So I can actually use this as a divider board. So I'm trying to minimize my scrap and maximize the amount of wood that I have available to me. That's really, for me, that's probably the best way of doing it. Okay, nothing I need to know. Sorry about that. And we started off by getting these boards and just, I jointed one edge to get a flat edge because I needed to start cutting some of these down into wider pieces. Now that, or not wider, but I needed to cut the straight ends off of them to measure. Now that I have them cut down to, or jointed on one side, and that's actually just a temporary joint. Now what I can do is run them through the table saw and put them into 3-inch wide boards and then take them back to the jointer. Unfortunately, my jointer is only 6 inches wide. These boards are all, not these right here, but the ones behind me are all wider than 6 inches by sometimes a half, sometimes 3/4 of an inch. No matter what, they're wider than 6 inches, so I can't plane a flat face on them with the jointer until they are cut into thinner strips. So I will cut these into slightly wider than 3/4 of an inch. That gives me room to joint the edge and joint the other edge. So anyway, I don't want to take them to their final width yet, but I need to get them thin enough to fit on my jointer over there, which jointer over there. There we go, there's the jointer all set and ready to roll. So I need to get them trimmed down in width. And to do that, we will use the table saw, which I have set up over here. And I had to kind of clear a path because these boards being kind of long, they want to kind of move through this way. And this is my workbench that I use as a kind of a runoff to that table saw. But if I have stuff on here, it will get in the way. So I need to make sure that, I'm going to lean in here, put this away. I need to make sure that there's room for these boards because some of them are kind of long. I need to make sure there's room for them to feed through. Obviously, like if I've got a board like this length right here, it's going to feed all the way through and not interfere with anything on the table down at this end. But if I get one of the longer boards, which I have some longer ones here. Here's a long one. Oh my gosh, this is so heavy. Oh my gosh, Sapili, very heavy. So here's a very long board right here. And I had to make sure that this will clear the saw blade and it would also knock everything off my tape. So I think what I'm gonna do is come over here and I need to just clean house over here for a minute. It happens from time to time. I just have to come in and put some stuff away so that I'm not impeding, because what will happen is if I, ooh, those are teeny little screws and I don't know what they go to. I'm gonna put them over here. If I don't clean this off, the piece of wood will clean it off for me. Basically, that's the way it works. And I'd rather just do it myself, and that way I can sort of keep it neat. Most of this is just sandpaper. I kind of keep a pile of sandpaper here when I'm finishing stuff to grab for little hand sanding jobs and things like that. But nonetheless, it's still in the way, and I need to make sure that, it is not going to get knocked off. So I need to clear at least to the back of the saw and at least this wide, which I think this will do. So I can put a couple of things out of the way here. Actually, this tape can go away. you get to watch me clean my shop. I really didn't think this through, did I? I should have done this before I got you all in here. I apologize for that, but sometimes that's just the way things go. All right, I believe we are now clear enough that I can run these. I'm going to move these over here. There we go. So I can run this all the way through and not knock anything off and clear. So we're good there. All right. So I'm going to switch back to that view. And I'm going to hook up my dust collection on the saw. And it's just something I have to do before every cut that I make is clear my dust collection. Now this is sapele. It's a beautiful wood. It's in the mahogany family. And I did run a joint along one edge. Now, the faces of these boards have not been planed. So they've been sort of planed by the lumber mill, but I don't know, they're going to need to be jointed again, jointed or planed. So when I cut this face, I don't know if this face is going to be exactly 90 degrees to the finished face, but I needed something to put against the fence. I need to run this against the fence, which is why I did it. I did just a temporary joint on the edge of this so I could run it against the face of the saw and make sure that I'm getting at least something that will run true through the blade. Now I need to set my blade height. I'm going to come up just a little bit more. And my width is at, how wide is this board? Excuse me. I'm going to make these wider than 3 inches. This is 6.5. I'm going to lose, you know, 1/8 of an inch from the blade, the kerf of the blade. So I'm going to just say, you know, roughly about 3.5 inches, maybe just a 1/16 shy of that. And that'll give me a lot of extra wood on the edges to play with, because I want to make sure that I am having enough on each edge to joint them again and for sanding and other such things. So I don't take them down to their final width yet, but I do need to have this kind of knocked down. So let's go ahead and grab my ears here. I believe the saw is plugged in, and I've got my remote for the dust collection. I'm going to move this board back over here, and let me get my push here. That's not going to work. I need to make sure that I've got clearance here. So for my pusher. So that will work. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and cut this down, and then we can just kind of get cruising through some of these. Whoa! Well, that's weird. That's not where I want this cut to be. So, oh, because I'm stupid and I did 3.5 and it should be 3.25. Yikes. I was like, well, that's a really wide cut there. That's why. So that will be better, because I don't know if you can see, but when I started to make that cut, I was like, well, that's not kind of equal, which it should be. That's much better. So this is now, this is almost 3 inches. I'm still a little wide on here, or a little narrow in this one. I'm gonna have to be a little closer. Hopefully I won't lose that much wood when I clean off this edge. Now, here's the thing. I say 3 inches. I can go a little less than 3 inches. My bases do not need to be exactly 3 inches to work. 3 inches is more than enough depth for the bases themselves. If I need to take it down a little bit, I can do that, and it's not going to hurt anything. But what I want to do is measure this board. I'm going to get this cut right in the middle. So 6 5/8. So 3 and 1 1/2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 2 1/2. So 3 and 1, 2 1/2 right here. I just want to get this little center cut there. That looks like it's centered. And then I will just move this center so it's cutting right there. That looks pretty good. All right, let's cut this one down. We're just going to keep cutting these down until they're usable widths for me. Okay. Then we will grab the rest of these. Here's another Sapele board. And once again, I just want to make sure I'm cutting this in the middle. Let me get this width on here. So this one needs to be exactly 3 1/4 inches in the middle of the cut. Ouch. That's probably gonna need to move over a little bit. Okay. Yeah, I tell you, this is gonna burn on that thing. Wow, there's some burning going on there. I mean, that's all gonna joint off anyway, but and it always burns on the outboard side. So on this side of the blade, you look at this side, there's no burning on here. So I always find it kind of interesting that it burns on the outboard side. Not sure why that is. And this wood, a lot harder than cherry. So it's really kind of, I'm hearing some struggling going on there as it's cutting through. It's like, oh, it's really struggling to get through that. Now this next board also will probably struggle a little bit. This is quarter sawn white oak. Now this has some rough areas here. So I want to probably not take off as much. Let's see what we got for measurement here. 6 1/2. And I need, so I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. I do this. Let me see how much that leaves me here. I'm just measuring. That leaves me a little bit extra on this side, so that's good. And then that'll leave me, okay. 3 1/4 over there? No. Put 3 1/4 on this side. Sorry. This is why I have a microphone and I'm doing this live stream, because otherwise I just sit around and talk to myself and people think I'm crazy. But if I have a camera going, he's not crazy. He's talking to the audience. That's what they think. Anyway, this needs to come over just a hair here. Oh, this is such a heavy board. Such a heavy board. That should be good. Okay. Yeah, this, you want to see my saw struggle. Poor little 1.5 horse. It is a pretty sharp blade, but it's a hefty board. All right, here we go. Woo, smell that white oak. So I've got a little variety here. So you got a little burning on this one too, but that's okay. I don't mind the burning because it's going to clean up. But it's nice and smooth. A lot of variety here. I've got white oak for bases. I have sapele, and I've got cherry. So we're going to see how many bases we can actually pull out of all this. I think I've pre-measured most of these boards, and I thought I had more on the cherry, but we're going to next joint a straight face on there, or a flat face. So especially this board right here, this is a very rough board right here. Very rough, rough sawn, not here. It's also a very thick board. This board right here is 1 inch, it's just a hair over an inch. Basically, this is a full 4/4 board right here. Some of my boards are already down to 3/4 of an inch, so you can see the difference between these two boards right here. Got to take 1/4 of an inch off of this thing. Some of that will come off on the jointer, but a lot of that's going to come off on the planer. The sapele also, I think it's maybe 9. Let's see here. Yeah, it's like 15/16. So it's almost, this is almost an inch. So like I said, some of this is going to come off on the jointer. Some of this will come off. The bulk of it will come off in the planer. But what we need to do first is get a flat face. We need one flat face. So we will take one face and we will joint it. And then once we have that flat face, we can put that flat face against, like if this is the jointer and this face is flattened now, then I can run this through the jointer with this face against the fence, and that will give me one 90-degree angle from here and here. Once I have a 90-degree angle, I will flip it over so that the flat side is down again and run it through the planer to clean up the top. Finally, once that's done, I will run it back through the saw to get it down to its final width. That's kind of the process. So I'm going to stack these boards up over here, and then we will switch to a different camera, and then we will start jointing flat faces on these boards. So let me switch you over to this camera right here, and we should be able to get this. Now, actually, I'm going to do one thing, because I was using the jointer the other day, and I did not clean the dust bin out. So this is kind of a weird little thing here. So I don't have a connection for this hose that hooks up to this jointer. It has a really big opening down here, but the dust does like to collect up inside. So generally what I would do is just kind of take this hose right here, and I would just kind of stick it up inside there and suck out as much of it as I can. I get like big, like dust. Alrighty, so like I said, I don't usually have the dust collection hooked up on there because it doesn't really collect anything. I just kind of have to pull off. If I'm doing an edge, like if I'm just running the edge like this edge right here, obviously that makes really thin shavings. But when I do a whole face, it's taking a lot more wood off the surface, and that in turn creates a lot of shavings that need to be cleaned up after the fact. I wish this thing would hook up to my dust collection better, which I'm going to have to empty when I get done with this too, because when I start using the planer, whew, that's when I really create it. I'll create a lot of shavings that way. All right, I'm just going to like sight down this board and see if it's cupped or twisted. I mean, it's white oak, and white oak is pretty gnarly. It's got some really crazy grain that runs through it. I'd like to try to usually figure out which way is best side to run through here, but honestly, I don't think it really matters with this board. So I'm just gonna pick a side and hopefully run this through here. Now, I gotta turn my angle just a little bit here and make sure that I can get this board on here and have runoff. The other thing I might do is set up I've got a roller stand here for kind of like an outfeed. So if you look here, I've got a little roller stand. It's a little Harbor Freight thing, not very expensive. But as I'm feeding these boards off the end of the jointer, it will tend to, give myself a little room here. It kind of tends to hang out, and then the weight of it can push down and lift. It can lift the board off the blade a little bit. So in order to not do that, I'm going to try to just set a little extra support here. It doesn't have to be really, I'm not looking to run the whole board out, like get the full length. I just want enough to kind of keep it from tipping. So let me get this set up really quick. That might be it. It's probably too low. Need to lower this a little bit more. A little bit more. There we go. It's just to really, like I said, kind of support as I get this board running off of this thing to support that weight out past the table, because this is a very long board and that weight will start to affect my contact point against the blade here. Down on this end, down here, doesn't really matter because I'm holding it with my hand. So, all right, I got my push block. I got my ears on. Let's go ahead and joint a face. So it's not done, but I want to really quickly kind of show you what's going on here. And you can see, hopefully you can see, right here, you can see there's still rough areas right here, but up here, where it's contacting the blade now, it's smooth. So these areas are lower than this area. So as we keep lowering the surface of the wood, we'll get to the point where all of these rough spots, right through here, right here in the middle especially, it's kind of a little bit lower than the other sides. Right here, it's contacting the blade, so it's smooth here, rough here, smooth here, a little bit of roughness here, smooth here. We are going to keep doing this until we get that smooth surface from one end of the board to the other. And like I said, all we're doing with each pass is just removing a minute amount of material until we get it down to the point where that blade is now impacting the surface of the wood all the way along the length. And I don't take too aggressive of a cut. And you'll also notice, for the most part, I start pushing behind, but once I get the wood past where the blade is right here, I keep all of my pressure on both of these pads on this outfeed, because that way it's applying even pressure, because this ledge is slightly lower than, or slightly higher than this edge over here. And I want that pressure to be even across here. Otherwise you could get little undulations. So it's always better to keep the pressure on the outboard side whenever possible. All right, let's keep going. Here, a little bit right here. Oh. One more. Ugh. Okay, that was pretty brutal. And that's the thing, is you can't really tell how undulating a board really is sometimes until you start running it across a jointer, and then you start seeing where it just there's just these little peaks and valleys, and you have to get them all to one flat surface. We also took a lot of wood off of this thing, which a jointer is not a thickness planer. You're not trying to take a lot of stuff off of this. I mean, it seems like I took a lot off, but I took off maybe a 32nd of an inch total. I try to be really light with my cuts. I want to leave as much wood as I can on one surface. I'm just trying to get it flat and straight. So this now is a nice flat, you can hopefully see that. This surface on this side right here is very flat. This side is still rough, but we will handle this on the planer on this side. But what I'm going to do is mark this side, and then I'm going to rejoint this edge. I'm now going to take this flat side right here and run that against the fence and rejoint this side. So I'm going to make a little note here so I know which is my flat side. Right now it doesn't mean a lot because there's only one flattened side, but later on it'll mean something. So I'm going to make a little pigtail on there, and then I'm going to joint this edge so that I know that this is the edge that is flattened, or that is 90 degrees flattened. I've been doing jointing too long because I'm using the wrong words. Anyway, I'm going to make a 90-degree edge from here to here, nice square corner, and then we will move forward. Now, one thing I can do, because I've already got a flat edge on here, to see how my flatness is coming, to gauge the flatness, because I might look at this and go, well, it looks flat already. Well, I don't know that it's actually cutting the whole thing. So generally what I will do is get a pen or something and just do or pencil, and just do a squiggly line down the edge here. And what that does is it's a guide, it's a visual guide for me. You can see it goes all the way down. That's a visual guide for me to know that I have removed all the wood to make this squared up. So let's go ahead and do this one. Okay, yeah, it took me several cuts because even though it looked flat because I'd run it through the jointer once before, that edge was not square to this edge. Now that we have a nice flat edge, we needed this to be square to that. And so that's why it took a few passes to get that right. Now I'm gonna make a little triangle or a little arrowhead pointing towards my squiggly line. That lets me know that this corner right here is a 90-degree edge. So if I gotta do anything with this, this is the flat side and the side that would go against the fence or whatever. All right, that was a lot of work for one board. The other boards will not be as bad. The sapele is already flat. This, let me see what the thickness of this is. I think these have already been flattened as well. Yeah, so this, I'll run this through one time just to make sure that my maybe over time it's gotten a little bit warped because I flattened it, but then I never used it. So I just made a little pencil mark on there, and I'm just gonna run this flat side through, and then I will run this edge through here just to make sure that we're maintaining flat. But I think this one, like I said, pretty much all the way through, doesn't require a lot. This will go pretty quick. Now, how did this get up higher? That's weird. So this board actually has a little bit of a bend in it now, which probably, I don't know when that, actually that's not good. You know, like I said, having been cut and then set around the shop for a while, that can happen. If you don't use them, they can have a tendency to get a little bit of a cup in them. So I took some off of the edge here, and I took some off the edge here, but all this in the middle, not touched, which means this board has a little bit of a bend in it like this. So we're gonna take these edges down until it's flat all the way across, and that's really the best way to do this. So let's go ahead and keep at it. This shouldn't take too long now. I'm glad I did not take it for granted that that side was flat, because it was not. It definitely had a little bit of bowing to it going on this way. And had I just taken it at face value and said, oh, well, it's nice and flat, look, it's smooth, I would have been wrong. And that would have messed me up down the road. This may have been an edge that came from the mill this way, or the lumber store. Sometimes they'll flatten stuff on their own, but it'll be sitting around for a while and that stuff will move. So that's why I always like to check, just to make sure that when I put that, you know, the edges that I put on here are going to be nice and square, because that will affect how they look when I am putting these into a finished product. It will affect the squareness of that product. So really glad I did that. Now, one of the minuses of that, though, is that I actually ended up having to take a lot of wood off of one end, because I needed to get this flat, right? So to do that, it's shaving wood off of the end until it gets the whole thing lowered. And that gave me a little thinner here than I think I should be. I think this is less than 3/4 of an inch. Yeah, so this is now too thin, which means I'm gonna lose, well, that's 3/4 right here. So I'm going to lose about 6 inches off of this board. I've got about 6 inches right here that I can't use, because this side hasn't been flattened yet either. Which is a shame, but it's, you know, I can't, I had to do what I had to do to get it flat, right? So I have some extra cherry laying around here that I can mill up to make up for that piece of wood if I need to. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to do. But I'm going to do the same thing with this board right here. It looks to be milled up flat. No telling if it is or not. So I'm going to get my big pencil here. Pencil mark across. I'm just running that and doing a little swirly thing all the way across. Let's see. I mean, you know, if I eyeball this, I can tell already that this has a bow in it. And unfortunately, it's just the way it is. But we're going to, let me see, which way should I run this through? I'm going to run it through this way. I think that'll be a little kinder to the jointer. Let me clean some of this pile of stuff up out of here, because it'll keep my jointer cutting better. I have a massive pile of shavings down here now. They get to be much larger when you're doing the face, like I said, than the edge. All right. Definitely gonna have to empty that dust bin. Okay, this is actually gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna be shaving off, kind of starting with the edges here. It's gonna cut. When I pass it through, you may not notice because of the sound canceling, but the cut will be prominent on this end and this end, and I'll have untouched wood in the middle, I guarantee it. You always want to have, like, if you have a board that you're trying to flatten, don't have the smiley face up when you're doing it, because you want contact points. You want this to have contact points. So as I shave, and I'll be shaving off the edges here and then lowering those contact points until the whole surface is contacting. There's no way to keep this flat. It's gonna rock if you have that smiley face going up like this, and you're trying to pass it through the jointer, and you're kind of like doing one of these things. This way it maintains its contact points and it goes through straight. And even though it's shaving down off the ends, by the time it gets to the entire board, that whole surface will be flat. If you do it this way, you're still gonna have a messed up board. So always try to have those contact points down when you're sending it through your jointer. Little helpful tip. How do I know that? I have no idea. Except maybe I screwed that up a few times. Hey, it's a learning process, right? All right, let's see how much we have to shave off of this bad boy. I hope I don't lose any wood off of here. I hope it's thick enough. So I just want to show you real quick. So now I've taken off of the surface here, but right here is a little pencil mark, more pencil mark, more pencil mark. So all of this, even though there's a flat section going on here, this is why I do the pencil mark. So it's flat here, but there's still, I'm not getting it all the way across right here. Now, as it gets down to right here, it's now flat again. So I've got this little area right through here that's a little bit low. So flat contact points at this end, flat contact points all the way down through here. But I've got this section, and it's flat right here, but I've got this section right here, not so flat. So as I enhance this a little bit more squigglies in here, we'll see that this section right up through here, right up through there where I've made that extra squigglies on there, is not getting cut by the jointer. Flat right here, but not here. And if you don't make these squiggly lines on there, you may not realize that. You might like, oh, look, it's cutting all the way. Well, it is cutting across the entire surface of the board now, but it hasn't flattened this section out. So that's why I do the pencil mark. I just find it more effective that way. So, you know, give it a try sometime. I think you'll be surprised at how much you are and are not cutting when you're doing this. Finally got that one flat, so you can see that now all of that pencil mark is gone from here. I mean, there's just a hint of it right here, but that's close enough, I think, for what I need to do. Like, as I don't want to sacrifice too much width on these. I think we're still good. This is just a hair over 3/4 of an inch. So this is good. This is not going to need to really be flattened at all. I mean, I will run it through the jointer or through the planer just to make sure it's equal across the length of the board, but yeah. All right, so Peely, same way. We're going to make a mark on here and just let's make sure this gets cleaned off of here. These have, like I said, been factory flattened or, you know, lumber mill flattened. I don't know. Now these have a tendency to be a little straighter, but they've got, I mean, I'm looking down the length of it and there's a little bit of undulation in here. So I don't know how clean this is going to be, but we're going to, some of the blades coming this way, goes to this way. Yep, we're going to run it this way. All right. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I got so happy about doing this that I did not mark this board, and I need to cut an edge on here as well. Is this the one I just did? No. Is this one's done. This one, was this the one that was skinny on one end? I did not. Okay, I did not do the edge on this board. So let me run it through here real quick because we need to get an edge. And let me make sure I'm getting the edge. See, I got ahead of myself. I was so excited to get that flattened down. Let's get this down here. Oh, come on. Almost. Had a little pencil mark left at the top there. I had to run it through one more. All right. Now we can run this Peely. Let's see what this, oh, this is the one with the big, you just notice I put that little X there. This is the one with that big mark here. So I don't want to run this because there is a big undulation in here. I don't want to run this side down. I want to have this is a little bit flatter on this side here. So a little bit flatter. see, we've got here. Wax. All right. So I have a little problem here. Not a problem, but my table is becoming really hard. The not the table, but the jointer table. It's getting really tough to push, especially the sapele through there, and so that's creating kind of uneven pressure going across because it won't move out smoothly and it's kind of jumping. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit of wax on the table here, and maybe let me vacuum it off first. Oh. So the harder it is to move the wood, to push the wood through, even though this is a nice smooth flat cast iron, sometimes if the wood hangs up, if there's just, I don't know, the wood itself is, I won't say sticky, but it just doesn't want to move. And that causes uneven pressure as I'm trying to guide it across the blade there. And that can be a problem. And I was getting that with this sapele. It wasn't so bad with the cherry, but the sapele, however you want to call it, that was a little bit worse. Put just a little bit more on there. And so I think if I smooth my table out now, it should run through. I mean, I'm almost done with this piece. There was actually a lot to come off of this particular piece. Excuse me. There was a lot, and there's still just a little bit more. You can see where I've made these marks right here. There's a little bit more to come off of here. Taking a lot of thickness off of these things that I wasn't planning on removing. And yeah, I've taken a lot. This is down to 7/8, and then some of it's actually thinner than that. I may get less yield out of this. See, this is already less than 3/4 of an inch in the middle, and it hadn't even flattened on this side yet. So I'm going to lose yield on this thing, which is really, it irks me because this wood should have been, I didn't mill this. This came milled. And unfortunately, they screwed this board up because there's a lot of divoting. There's a lot of stuff going on here that this got screwed up. So I can't use a lot of this, and which means I'm going to lose at least a base out of this now. I'm not going to be able to use this, which kind of irks me. But it is what it is. I mean, I could, get mad about it, but what's that going to help? It is what it is. And I'll keep the thinner pieces, and one day maybe I'll make I don't know, like a jewelry box or something out of it, or just a little keepsake box or something with the sapele. I mean, sapele is a pretty wood, so I'll try to get some of this in here. Get this buffed off here. That'll get this running through smoothly. But yeah, that really does kind of spoil my plans a little bit. And I'm gonna have to go back and reassess how much wood I actually have left to do what I need to do. I might have to make a couple of smaller bases instead of the longer ones. So that also could be the impact of not having as much wood, is I just have to make a couple of smaller projects. I have smaller base dimensions that I can use, so they don't all have to be the large one. But that was kind of what I was planning on doing. I get more money for the large ones with usually not much more work. But all right, let's go ahead and run this last one through here. I think I can get it with one more pass here. Like I said, it was just being kind of a pain in the butt, but it's much smoother on here now. So that should equal out to a better pass on here. Let's see. Okay, that's pretty good. I mean, I don't know if that was visible or not, but it just glides across once you've put some wax on there. So I am gonna trim out, I think I'll trim this edge right here. So let me put my pigtail on here so I know which side's flat. And then we'll do the pigtail over here. I'm gonna just, Lord knows how crooked this edge is. So I'm just gonna put my pencil mark on here. This one's harder for you to see, but I can see it up close. Let's just see if we can get this cleaned off. Okay, this is too high now. This is kind of weird. I have to keep moving and adjusting this depending on which side I'm cutting here. It's kind of strange. All right. I did not get the full edge there, so yeah, not really flat and square there. All right. Yeah. This is really kind of unexpected. I mean, it kind of happens when you're milling wood. But I mean, the whole point, I mean, I thought that was going to be squarer than it was, but it was not. So the whole point in this, though, is that this edge needs to be super straight, no cupping in it or anything, super straight edge, and has to be at a 90-degree angle to this face. That's kind of the whole point. It is now, but man, I lost some serious wood out of here. Oh, man. Losing a lot more wood. Like I said, this is not usually a flattening thing when you're jointing these boards. But for whatever reason, that board was sucking wind here. Let me see what I got here. Actually, this looks like a flat face here, although it has some rough cut on it. This looks to be the flatter face, but when I look at it here, there's some definite undulations on this face. So I'm gonna flatten this side. I've got some rough cut right here. Definitely gonna use my marker and figure out what we've got going on here. Oh shoot. And it has another snipe edge right here, another big snipe edge. I tell you, sometimes this woodworking thing, I can't flatten it down to this edge. I can't do that. I'm gonna have to flatten this side. Doggone it. I gotta do that. Ow. And I picked up a splinter. That's always fun. Always fun to pick up a splinter. All right, let's go down here because that other side had that big snipe on it. I'm gonna do a double line on here so I know that this is the side I'm supposed to do. All right, this is just the way it goes sometimes, folks. You know, you have a plan, you think you're going good, and then all of a sudden they go, whoop, nope, not so fast. Not so fast, mister. Now, let's just hit that. It's gonna be a little low. I'm gonna raise this back up again, I guess. Just a touch. Emptying the dust chute. That should be good enough. All right, let's see how horrible this is going to be. It all seems horrible right now. Pretty horrible. Here, a little bit through here. Okay, I have this last little section right here. I'm not going to worry about this right now because this section is kind of unusable anyway. That's why I have this line drawn right here, because this was some heavy duty snipe from their industrial planers, whatever. So I'm going to, basically what I will do is before I run this through the planer is I'm going to cut this board off like right here and lose that extra width. Or that extra length off of there. I'm just going to lose this off of here because it's not usable anyway. It's below 3/4 of an inch now. And I don't want to sacrifice more of this. This is all good. This surface right here is very flat. You can see I've got it nice. And this is beautiful wood too, this sapele. So now what I'm going to do is I've got my flat edge. I'm going to run through and joint my long edge. Put my little mark there. So let's get a nice edge here. And then we'll kind of assess what we're doing here. Ouch! Now, someone, if they can explain to me why every time I run an edge through, this thing is lower or too high, but when I put the face through, it's too low. Somebody explain that to me and I'll be a happy guy. But anyway, let me lower this just a hair so that this thing comes through and it's not going to be hitting this. I need it just, there we go. Okay. Yeah, dang splinter on there. I got to watch this because this is a rough edge. All right, let me try this again. And oh, I also didn't do this. So, you know, as I was running it through, I was like, oh, I don't have a mark. Now I did have saw marks on here. This is an edge that got sawed, so I could sort of see what was getting cleared off a little bit, but let's put the pencil on there just to be sure. All right, that looks nice. So the way, if you've got a straight edge jointer, you know, basically what it's doing is you've got one blade that comes around, takes a scoop out of this thing. And if you go too fast, you'll get a scalloped edge. It'll just be scalloped. So the way to get a smoother edge is to just slow down, and it takes more cuts out of that wood as it's progressing through. And those scalloped edges will get smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where it's much smoother. If you push them through really fast, you'll see where it's doing this scalloping thing. So that is one way of doing it. All right, let me assess what I've got left here. I actually have a lot left to do here. And I'm just thinking, you know, do I want to make you watch me do all of this? Because that's a lot. I mean, it's one thing for me to stand here and do this. It's another thing for you to sit there and watch. And I'm sure if you were watching, you've probably already clicked off already because you're like, what am I doing here? My life is passing before my eyes. It's ridiculous. I have 2 more large sapele boards and one more massive oak. I'll tell you what, I will do this last oak board and then we will call it for today for the live stream. Obviously, I have a lot more work to do here, but we'll call it for the live stream. But we will do one more. Let me adjust this. And yeah, so let's do this one. I've identified what I think is the flattest of the edges. And on an oak board, that's not really a thing, but especially rough sawn, which this is, but that's okay. It's getting harder for me to find white oak, quarter sawn white oak. There's only one place around here that carries quarter sawn white oak, and it's getting really expensive. So I want to make sure that I'm getting good yield out of this, because that's important to me, is to get the most I can out of these expensive boards. That's why it kind of bothers me on the sapele, because it's kind of expensive and yet I'm not getting great yield out of it. Let me hit the vacuum on this one more time here. Just clean this out, because this oak is going to make a lot of mess. All right, that was exciting for you, wasn't it? Unfortunately, it's kind of necessary because it'll jam up the blades and stuff and they won't get as clean a cut. And like I said, hopefully I won't be taking too much off of here, but every flat pass you make with a wide board, and just a lot of wood comes off of there. So, all right, hopefully this will go smoothly now that I've waxed these tabletop. I tell you what, it's like a whole different joiner when I put that wax on there. I should have done it sooner. Should have done it sooner. All right, let's get cutting. A lot of cutting. All right. As enough of that. Let's get this thing edged, and we'll call this one done. I'm going to work on this edge over here. Let me put my pigtail on here, and then I know which one to do. Run through an edge here. Let me make sure it's not going to hit and be stupid. Yeah, it's going to be stupid. I don't know why it does that, but that's okay. There we go. All right. Okay, that one is nice and super straight. And now, as I look down the length of this, there is a really slight bow to it. And a lot of that comes from the fact that my joiner bed is not super long. If my joiner bed was longer, I would be able to eliminate that really slight bow in it. But what happens is as the wood kind of comes off the edge of the joiner, it kind of nosedives down just a little bit. That's why I've been having to readjust that outfeed table thing, or the outfeed roller. But because I'm going to be cutting these down into smaller pieces, they will not really be impacted by that as much. This is that quarter sawn white oak. I don't know if you can see it in here. See all the medullary rays like right in through here where my hand is. There's a whole bunch of them right through here. This is why this stuff is so pretty, because this is what a lot of old decorative cabinets and stuff are made out of. And wow, I got some width off of this one too, man. Am I gonna be able to use all of this? Whew. Wow. Anyway, taking a lot of width off. I'm gonna have to empty my dustbin, and I got a lot of things to do. So for right now, I think, what are we at here? Almost 1 o'clock. Come back over to my other camera here. Take these off my head. Let me just check. I don't think there's probably any. If there's anybody still watching by now, good bless your heart, because holy mackerel, that's just a lot of watching me feed wood through a jointer right there. You can see why when people make woodworking videos and such, you don't get to see all this. You see them kind of like either speed it up a lot and they'll pass it through, or they'll start it and end it, and then all of a sudden, boom, they have finished boards. This is what goes into it. This is what it takes to mill your own wood, and it's a process, and it's one that, you know, it's satisfying to do. You could go to a store like Woodcraft, okay? Probably Rockler and some other big ones, if you have those around you, will have S4S boards, which is surfaced on 4 sides. They will have jointed edges and plain sides, or jointed and planed, and, you know, all that stuff. So it'll have 4 square corners with flat sides all around. You can buy those boards, but you're going to pay a lot more for those boards. It costs a lot of money for them to surface those boards, and they pass that along with some profits onto you, so you pay more, which is why I buy rough surfaced wood. It's on average about, I would say, well, it's half of what you would pay at a big box store. Absolutely half, if not less, than you would pay at a big box store. If I bought a piece of oak lumber, like this piece of oak lumber would probably cost me, all finished and milled up and everything, that would probably cost me anywhere from $15 to $20 for that board. I got like the whole big massive thing, double wide and everything else, probably for that much. So, well, actually, this is quarter sawn, so you'd probably be talking $40 for their board. It's worth it if you have the tools to do it. I will say that. You know, I didn't used to have all the tools to do that. I didn't have a jointer at one point in time, so I had to buy surfaced wood. I had no other way to do it. Excuse me. There are videos out there that say, oh, how to surface your wood without a jointer or whatever. I don't want to say you can't do it. Obviously, people have been doing it for years before they had jointers, and a lot of them you can do it with hand planes and such. But you're looking at, I don't know, 5 times the time it would take to do that. And I don't have 5. I mean, it's not like I have somewhere to go, but I have other things I want to do. So I'm not going to spend 5 times the time just to get a hand plane to make my boards authentically flat with. And there are people who do that, and I appreciate the art and craft of it, but that's not for me. And if it's not for you, you know, find yourself a jointer. It's not that much. You know, I got that for $150 on Craigslist. Just keep your eye out for one. You know, they will pop up every now and then. It doesn't have to be that big. There are smaller ones, and you can actually buy smaller ones. The big ones, you know, obviously they're going to go up in price, and that's kind of what I am leaning towards when I am selling stuff and everything, is I'm kind of banking money away, because I want to actually get a even larger and more improved jointer / planer, because I want a combo machine that does both, but I want it to have a helical head, which gives you a smoother surface once it's done. It's a shear cut, it's not a straight cut, and You get it's better on figured woods and things like that. You don't get as much chip out. Plus it's wider, it's a 12-inch wide, so I can joint my boards flat without having to cut them down narrow first, which would save me time. That's a splinter that's gonna be hurting me for a while, I'm sure. But anyway, so that's kind of where I'm leaning to, is something along those lines, which would be a step up from what I have now, which is a 6-inch jointer and a 12-inch wide planer. And it's, you know, so you can get into this for a little bit of money, you can get into it for a lot of money. I mean, that's the thing. There's always going to be more expensive machines. You can buy a hammer for $5,000 that does 16-inch wide jointing and planing. And it's cool. There's really nice. There's a couple of YouTubers who have those machines, and I'm just like, every time I see them, I'm like, oh my God, it's so cool. But $5,000, right? I don't have like a YouTube income that supports that or anything else that supports spending that much money. And also, I just don't have the shop space for it. But that is why I want a combo machine, because I don't have a lot of shop space, and I can fit it in a space that's almost the same size as what my jointer takes up now. So to me, that's kind of cool. Can you do it without all that stuff? You can. I wouldn't want to, and I didn't used to. I used to buy my surface boards and pay more for them. And as I was able to, this has paid for itself more times than I can count. That jointer has more than paid for itself in the cost of lumber that I've been able to eliminate. I think I paid $230 for my planer at Harbor Freight, and I got it with like a 20% discount coupon one time. They had one of those, and I bought that thing, and it's been great. It's Harbor Freight, but you know what? That particular machine is the exact same guts as a lot of brand name machines that you'll find. If you would go and actually compare them, if you took the nameplates on and you compare them physically, they're the exact same thing. So you can, now there are others that are obviously not that machine and you can spend more. Like I would love to have like the big DeWalt 13-inch big mamma jamma, but that's like $650. And then if you want to put a helical head in there, that's another $600. So there's a $1,200 jointer or planer right there. Well, I'm halfway to my jointer planer combo that I want if I do that. So I thought about it in ways that I could do it, but for right now, this is what I do. This is my process. I joint the boards on two sides. So I do a flat side and I do an edge. Well, let's grab it right here. I joint one flat side. I take that flat side, I run it through. It's now flat. Then I take that flat side, I turn it up on edge, put it against the fence, run it against the fence. That means that now when it cuts down here, I've got one flat side edge. And that is square to this face. The next step is to take this flat side and run it through the planer with the flat side down. That flat side becomes a reference for the planer blade to use as it cuts the top. And that is how I thickness the boards, by reducing the thickness to my usable size or just a hair over it. But that gives it a parallel face to what's underneath. That's why you want this flat, because it will make whatever, it'll be parallel to whatever. If this is not flat, the planer doesn't care. It's going to make it match whatever the bottom is. So if you've got undulation, you'll have undulation on the top. That's why you flatten it on the jointer, one flat side here, and then you run it through the planer. It's going to make a parallel edge. Once that's done, you run that jointed edge here that you did, which is square to this one. You run that along the fence of your saw, like my table saw. That is going to cut off an edge here that is parallel to this edge. Now, once that happens, I have 4 square edges, and we're ready to actually cut these down to size and do some joinery. But that is the process beginning to end. If you already knew that, I apologize for the explanation. But if you didn't know it, now you do. And I'm sitting here looking at a gigantic pile of sawdust that came out of my jointer that came from that last oak board. So I'm going to take all of these are my finished boards are over here. I'm going to take these once they're done and run them through the planer. I still have 2 more sapele boards to run through the joiner. Hopefully they're not as bad as the last one. Well, that one just really broke my heart because I lost a lot of wood out of that one. The thickness ended up being less than my usable thickness. So when I get done joining these things, I'm only going to have so much of that board left out of the entire board that I can use. And that makes me a little sad because, like I said, it's expensive wood and I really wasn't expecting to lose that much lumber out of there. But they did a really piss poor job, pardon my French, but they did a piss poor job of milling these things at the shop or wherever, whoever did the milling on them, because I don't know what the hell they were doing, but they're undulated, and I would have rather them just left them rough cut and let me do it, honestly. But I will be looking at that next time I go to pick boards out and just really kind of measuring those thicknesses and looking at the edges and saying, okay, how much am I really going to lose when I start milling this stuff down? Normally a 4/4 board, which is usually an inch or just a hair over an inch, a 4/4 board, you're taking it down to 3/4 of an inch. You really shouldn't plan on losing that much. I mean, typically by the time I have them flat through the planer, I still have to take off at least 3/16 of an inch or more of wood to get it down to that 3/4. But here I'm actually going to be under that 3/4 mark on some of these. So a little disappointing, but it is what it is. You know, at the end of the day, I'll make product and people will be happy with the product. I've got some premium stuff. Like I said, the oak ones will be beautiful when they're done because quarter sawn's it's just gorgeous. And I love the way when I finish it that it just looks beautiful. So let's go ahead and call it a day. It's a little after 1, it's 10 after 1, and that's pretty good because I need to go and let the dogs out and get some lunch and then get back out here in the shop and finish jointing. And I'm probably going to start planing these boards too. So you won't get to share in that process, but you're welcome. So, because it's actually about as exciting as watching the joint. Actually, it's a little bit better than jointing because once I have all the boards kind of at the same thicknesses, I can just start sending them through and I don't have to, it's a little easier because I send it through, lower it down, send them all through. So it goes a little faster than the jointing process. That is one benefit of that, but anyway. All right. Thank you so much for stopping in. If you did, I'd ask you to give me a like, but I'm not going to ask you to like jointing because, good God, it was painful, and it still is. It's painful for me because I got a splinter here that I got to go dig out, but it's painful to watch. I enjoy doing it, but I'm sure it's not that much fun to watch. So thank you for stopping by if you did. Please stop back in again on Wednesday where we will be continuing this process and working on things. And I don't know if there's something else I need to throw into the mix, I will, because that's just how I roll. Otherwise, have a great afternoon. Have a great Tuesday. Take care of yourself. Get your shot. I got my second one. I'm good to go. Wear your mask because, you know, let's be safe. Let's take care of each other. Take care of yourself. And you know what? Have a great rest of our year. So sounds good to me. Hope it sounds good to you. I will catch you on Wednesday.